So Lars Reuning is working as a lecturer at the Institute of Geosciences at CAU Kiel University. His research explores the geological history of reef systems and examines the impact of human activities on their current and future dynamics. So today he's going to be presenting plastic Frankenrocks, plastiglomerates, and other types of rock like plastic pollution in coastal environments, in ecosystems.
Thanks for the introduction, Catherine. And yeah, sorry for the technical hiccups. So most of what I'm going to present today is based on a project funded by the German Academic Exchange Service in Germany and the National Research and Innovation Agency of Indonesia. The results of the study were published by the first author, Amanda Otami, and myself, and co-workers in the journal Scientific Reports. For those who would be more interested in more details, the link to the study will be posted in the chats. In my talk, I want to focus on plastic pollution in tropical ecosystems, mainly coral reefs. In countries such as Southeast Asia, about 80 to 90% of all plastic waste is mismanaged. Indonesia, particularly, is a country with the largest reef area worldwide, but at the same time, it has the second highest level of mismanaged plastic waste entering the ocean. Here you can see a map of the Java Sea. The study area we used for the plastic research is a part of Banten Bay in the northwest of Java. So it's about 100 kilometers away from Jakarta Bay, which is one of the most densely populated areas on the Earth. So here you can see the study area itself. It's an island called Panjang Island, which is the only inhabited island in Banten Bay, with a population of around 4,000 inhabitants that are concentrated towards the south of the island. The northern part of the island is relatively remote and mainly used by local fishermen. We have chosen the study area because it's located close to three iconic tropical coastal ecosystems. First, mangrove forests, which are covering the area towards the east of the study site. Then we have got seagrass meadows, which are just off the coastline in the shallow water close to the beach. A bit further offshore, there's a coral reef. It's a Frenching reef and is providing most of the sediment at the beach. So if we have a look what the beach looks like, you can see it's mainly composed of coral rubble. Basically, all natural fragments are derived from the Frenching reef. Despite its relatively remote location, the beach is strongly polluted by plastic waste, as you can see here in the foreground. Besides this now nearly normal form of plastic pollution, we noticed a relatively new form of plastic pollution, which is more rock-like, so-called plastiglomerates. This term was coined by Patricia Corcoran, who is also in the audience today, and these plastiglomerates consist of an agglutination of geological and or biogenic material with molten plastic. For example, here, everything you can see in this black and bluish colors, that's all molten plastic, while the light particles are all derived from the coral reef fragments of corals. An American news outlet reported on our findings and came up with a very catchy title. At first I thought the term Frankenrocks sounds kind of stupid. However, upon further consideration, I noticed some similarities between our plastiglomerates and the famous monster created by Frankenstein. So first, Frankenstein's monster was man-made. It was assembled, at least in the famous film version with Boris Karloff, from different components, including technical and natural materials, such as body parts. The same holds for our plastiglomerates, which also consists of natural components like this coral here and artificial components made from plastic. So basically, this plastiglomerate is pieced together from components that do not occur in this form naturally. This explains the first part of the term, the Franken from Frankenstein, of the Frankenrocks. But what about the second part, the rock? So as first-year students in geosciences, we learn that a rock is a naturally occurring solid mass or aggregate of minerals. In some ways, this plastic pollution type is resembling a rock. It is clearly solid and forms an aggregate containing minerals. However, the matrix is composed of plastic. Most people would argue that this type of pollution is man-made and therefore not occurring naturally. The so-called plastiglomerates are therefore not covered by the classical definition of a rock. So as you can see here, the relative proportions of natural components in plastic is quite variable. Here you can see an example of a coral fragment, which is only covered with a thin crust of molten plastic. While here, on the other hand, you've got the sample, which is nearly exclusively formed of molten plastic. And it has lost its color and it's nearly looking rock-like as well. But how are these plastiglomerates formed? We know since a while now that many of these plastiglomerates are formed by burning plastic waste at the beach. So that was also the case for our study. Most of the plastiglomerates are produced in situ. So you can see the bluish material here. You can partly see the plastic waste in the more original form. And it is produced by the uncontrolled burning of plastic waste on the beach. So this is really shown nicely by the many abandoned fire pits containing plastiglomerates. Most of the recognizable plastic items which we found are ropes and packaging materials. The ropes are likely derived from abandoned fishing gear. Generally, the plastiglomerates contain the same types of plastic waste, which typically occur on these coastlines anyway. As mentioned before, it's a relatively remote beach without settlements or tourist activity, so the campfires likely were used by the fishermen who burned their waste locally. But now to the environmental implications. The important question is, what is the environmental impact of the plastiglomerates and how is it different from other forms of plastic pollution? So first we looked at the monomers that are used to produce the plastic because they can be ranked according to their environmental hazard potential. This results in a hazard score for each polymer type. Higher hazard scores means increased environmental risk. Most of the polymers in the plastiglomerates have a relatively low environmental risk. For example, that's a polypropylene, polyethylene. But there are about 12% of plastic types which are made from monomers that are more toxic to aquatic life. Moreover, our analysis showed that polyurethanes contain large amounts of phthalates, which are known to be or to have a very high ecological impact. So, but how are these plastiglomerates now different from this original plastic material? So after burning, all samples showed additionally high levels of polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons due to this incomplete burning at relatively low temperatures in campfires. These organic pollutants are known to be toxic to aquatic life again. The potential ecological hazard of these rock-like plastiglomerates, therefore, is much higher compared to the unburned plastic waste. But the plastiglomerates are not only different with respect to the associated organic pollutants, they also differ in their physical properties. So this figure shows a comparison between a typical infrared spectrum of an original polyethylene, which you can see here in green, and two burnt plastic samples in blue and in red. So these burnt plastic samples come from the plastiglomerates. all samples show the 4 characteristic peaks, so these 4, of the primary plastic. However, the spectra of the burnt plastic is showing 3 additional bands which are related to oxidation. This is due to the thermo-oxidation during burning in campfires. So by burning the plastic, it gets oxidized, and that makes the plastic more brittle. So it breaks easier. The matrix of the plastiglomerates, therefore, can easily break down into microplastic. This makes a beach with plastiglomerates to a microplastic hotspot. So, just to sum these environmental issues up, we know that the plastiglomerates form by the uncontrolled burning of plastic waste in campfires. They are different to the original plastics because the burning increases the contamination with persistent organic pollutants. The burning also promotes embrittlement and therefore decomposition into microplastic. And this is why plastiglomerate-ridden beaches can be hotspots for plastic pollution in tropical ecosystems. These novel types of plastic pollution must therefore be considered in environmental management strategies for tropical coastal ecosystems such as coral reefs, seagrass meadows, and mangrove forests. However, as a geologist, I have to come back to my original questions. Are plastiglomerates rocks? So this is the typical rock cycle that we use in geology to illustrate the dynamic processes by which rocks are created and transformed over geological time. At the beginning of the talk, I've mentioned that plastiglomerates are not covered by the classical definition of rocks. However, it appears obvious that plastic fragments of various sizes now form sedimentary particles. So should we add another branch to this rock cycle to include the man-made production of these sedimentary grains? And the terminology to describe sedimentary rocks is traditionally based on mineralogy and grain size. How will we in the future incorporate man-made material into this classification? Catherine has pointed out and pioneered in this respect in suggesting useful terminology. But what else do we need? Oh, yeah, there it is. Okay, to conclude my presentation, I would like to mention that plastiglomerates are also very suitable for scientific communication. They can be used to demonstrate how man-made products become part of our fossil record. Katharina Lauch is an artist who uses this concept of technofossils in an artistic way. She uses plastic waste to sample walking eggs, so-called plastic fossils. So you can see that here, and that's another approach how to deal with this kind of topic. So thank you very much for your attention.